Well, I think one of the big challenges with cybersecurity is really, I mean, states are struggling, right, with funding, trying to get appropriate funding for cyber, and really the message that CISOs, how do they align with the business? How do they communicate their business needs? And what we've seen over the years is that cyber continues to see either reductions in funding or not getting those increases. So what Molly has done great as far as continuity of government and teaming up with her and doing an exercise, focusing on how cybersecurity impacts the business and how really closely aligned those two things are. And by showing how security is fundamental to the business, now you get the business buy-in, you get the business to understand how cybersecurity can take down a network, can take down websites for multiple days. So it really helped overall, from an overall perspective, to get the business to understand the importance of cybersecurity. And I think Molly can go into what we did and how we did it.
The continuity of government program in Pennsylvania is where we help agencies make sure they're able to continue their business during any type of disaster. So it could be a natural disaster, it could be something as simple as a water main break or a fire, and it can also be an IT or a pandemic scenario. So we work very closely with agencies on making sure that they continue their critical business. So unemployment checks still need to go out, disability checks still need to go out, we still need to pay our bills, businesses still need to be certified to continue their business. All those things need to continue regardless of whether our computers are up or down or whether we've had a fire or storm or a tornado. So in partnering with Erik, Erik works tirelessly to make sure our networks are secure, to make sure that people are trained and know how to handle different kind of threats within the Commonwealth. And what I've struggled with is working with agencies on making sure they knew what to do when something happened. And something that Erik has always pushed for us in Pennsylvania is it's not if, but when. So what we did was designed an exercise that assumed when and gave a scenario for each agency to work through, from the continuity planner to the program people to the chief information officer, the security officer, the deputies for administration, and all the way up to the governor's cabinet and then the governor himself. And so in working through that, the scenario wasn't about fixing what caused the disruption, but what do we do when it happens, and what workarounds do we need to do? What business is affected? How does your planning document what might be affected if we do have something happen like a denial of service attack? And then how do you prioritize what's important? So if we have a denial of service attack and you do lose a particular application or a particular service, what's the political, social, and economic impact if you lose that? And then do you need a workaround? What's the communications plan? And so what it does is it helps later, first of all, it helps you prepare and to build a body memory for handling and grappling with the decisions that you have to make during that kind of a scenario. But it also helps with the realization that if we do have this happen and this is affected, we probably do need to invest in either securing this, or we do need to invest in a different alternative method of being able to do it. So it helps a lot in the future planning as well to continue the critical.
Yeah, absolutely, and it helps get that support. So, when we did this, as Molly explained, we started with multiple levels. We started with the agency, ISOs, the information security officers, met with them. We had teleconferences with each group. And as we went upward in the seniority chain, we changed the conversation a little bit because obviously you're speaking to different folks. We started off with the technical folks and we talked about the incident. We talked, there's an outage, your sites are down, what are you gonna, so how from a business aspect, how do you stay in business? What is your communications plan, as Molly said? And as we went, took that conversation to the next level, to the CIOs, then, it got even more higher level, it got more focused. We had the Secretary of Administration also as part of these briefings. We had the CIO from our agency, so he was talking to his agency CIOs. So you had, the conversation changed a little bit depending on on the audience that we talked to. And as Molly stated, we took that upward to the deputies of admin, basically making everybody aware of the cyber threat and how the cyber threat landscape has totally changed, and how something like, it's not if, it's when, and how can something like an outage or a denial of service attack impact their business. And then when we went to the cabinet to explain kind of to the cabinet these things at a very high level, really we left the technical pieces out of this. We were dealing with business terms. It really then, I think they got it. They understood how cybersecurity, how something like this from a cyber perspective can impact their business, and to kind of encourage people to become more aware that this threat is out there, that they need to be prepared when an attack occurs, and what are those communication plans? What is the natural course of action so that they can continue the business of their agency? And by doing that, we've elevated cybersecurity awareness, risk awareness, to the highest levels in the organization. And I think that's really helped, because what we've done since then is we've gone around with each agency, and we've started meeting with every agency head, their CIO and their CISO, and working through with each agency on how they're doing from a cybersecurity perspective. So it helped start the conversations with those agency heads and really drive cybersecurity from a top down, where everybody's aware, everybody's kind of working together, going the same direction. So I think that the exercise helped get to where we are today, changing the culture of cybersecurity for the better.
I would say one of the reasons why the exercise was so successful is we spent far more time on the objectives of the exercise and what we wanted out of it than we did on the scenario. So by the time we got to the point where we were talking about the actual scenario, the exercise almost wrote itself. So we spent a lot of front-end time on what is it that we actually want out of this. And definitely raising awareness of cybersecurity was the first one. Another one was also not just raise awareness, but in addition to that, have a sense for your role in that. And how do we incorporate that role into everyday continuity planning for the agency? And so because of those objectives, we spent more time on the things that would lead to meeting those objectives. And so it turns out that each of those groups that Erik mentioned actually went through a cyber awareness training in addition to an explanation of the exercise and the objectives and why we were doing it. So we were able to train 6 critical portions of an agency during a denial of service or a cyber event. And it was all very targeted, and it was provided by the peer in that area. So the Chief Information Officer gave the training and the exercise description to the CIOs. Same thing with the security officers, as well as our secretary talking with the deputies for administration, and then me speaking with the continuity managers. And we were able to, I think, realize the success of the exercise because of all the front end work on the objectives, which is actually a lot harder than it seems.
It is, and I think part of it too is, especially as you move up in the levels of the organization, is what is the takeaways? 3 takeaways they're going to get from this. What are the 3 actions? What are they going to go back at their agency? What are those 3 things they're going to go back to their agency and do? Whether it's create a communications plan, talk to their CIO, build a framework of a conversation, get the conversation going about what are we going to do about this. And I think those conversations have certainly happened because as we went and met with the agencies, we noticed a different culture, a shift in culture from a cybersecurity perspective, where the agency heads were really interested at this point. I mean, they had a totally different outlook on cyber and how it impacts the business. So I would focus on a few things, especially when you get to a cabinet level type of folks where they have very limited time. They want to know what is it that they need to do that they can take back to their agency. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I could recommend.